Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I have some clothing alterations to do today. A customer has bought in 2 shirts or blouses. She needs them hemmed, and I'll show you how I go about doing the hems very quickly. For me, it's about managing my time most efficiently, and I have done a couple of videos on hems, say for example the band roll technique. This one here is just a narrow double folded hem. I'll show you my way of doing them quickly. Stick around and we can work on this together. I've had several people ask me to do more alterations videos, so I hope you enjoy this one. And if there's anything that you particularly want to see, let me know, because when that job comes in, I'll bring it home and I'll make sure I do a video for that. I'm actually only just starting back to alterations after having the past 2 months off, and I've just let the town know that I'm back at it, so it'll be interesting to see what comes in the next couple of weeks. I've actually missed it too. Hang around and we'll work on this together. These are the shirts the customer has given me, a blue one and a nice stripy green one, and she's already placed a pin at the finished hem length that she'd like. Both of the shirts have curves at the bottom, so I will be keeping that curve and following that through. So we'll work on this one first. They only have a very small 1/4 inch hem, which is a double fold. So this is quite an easy alteration to do. Because this is our finished hem, we need to allow the double fold hem allowance underneath that pin mark there. And because that is a 1/4 inch hem, twice, that'll be 1/2 inch. We need to make this fabric 1/2 inch longer than where the position of the pin is. Normally I would use chalk, but the chalk is going to be really difficult to see on this fabric. So this is a fade out pen. I will be drawing on the cut line, so nobody will see this later anyway. So what we need to do is add 1/2 inch to the finished hem length, and I'm going to line up my 1/2 inch mark right where the pin is. This will now be my cutting line. Now that I've established my cutting line, I need to go back to the bottom and measure the distance from the cutting line to the end. And when I take my measurement, I'll be taking it from the bottom edge of that drawn line that I've made, because I need to allow for the thickness of the marker that I've used. So I need to take off just over 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. What I'll do now is make a mark along the bottom of the shirt, and I'm going to follow the contour or the shape of the shirt all the way through to the other side. Much easier if you open it out completely. That way when you come to cutting, you're not going to accidentally cut the back of the shirt. Okay, I've marked the shirt right across the entire length, and I'm not going to cut this just yet. I'm going to stabilize it first. This line that I've marked, we need to follow that when we're at the machine. If you feel you need to, you can actually join all of these markings and have a line to follow. So you can just make that one continuous line. I tend not to do that because the length of the presser foot is enough for me to see where I'm going. So I'll just use those dotted markings to follow along. Now, as I said, I'm not going to be cutting this fabric. What I will be doing, this is my presser foot, and it's got a 1/4 inch finger on one side. So what I will be doing is, as I'm sewing, the right side edge of my presser foot will be running along that drawn line. What will happen is that the needle is going to come down between the fingers there and sew 1/4 inch away from this drawn line. Remember, this drawn line is the cutting line. So by following along that line there, we're going to create 1/4 inch seam. We're not stretching our fabric out as we would if we had cut our fabric first. So it's going to keep the integrity of the fabric, and we'll be able to later go and chop off this excess fabric on that drawn line. Let's take this to the machine. I've changed my stitch length to 3.5. Having a longer stitch length will also help prevent some of the stretchiness that you get when your stitches are too short. Now all I'm doing is running the edge of my presser foot against that line that I've drawn. You don't need to push or pull your fabric, let the machine guide your fabric through. I'll speed this section up. This process took about 3.5 minutes just to do the first row of stitching. It's far quicker than having to measure everything, try and cut it straight, and then having to be really gentle with the fabric because you've got those frayed edges there. And then we run the risk of stretching our fabric as we're sewing. This way keeps the weave of the fabric nice and stable. So we're halfway through. There is the drawn line and the stitching line 1/4 inch away. And what we can do now is cut the fabric. By sewing this stitch first, we've created a guide for ourselves for hemming. Because it's such a narrow hem, it's a little bit awkward to fold it over twice, but we've also prevented the fabric from stretching when it's cut. Now all we need to do is cut along the drawn line. So you can take your scissors and just follow that line, and then you've got your stitching that was prepared earlier inside the fabric. I like to lay my fabric out nice and flat, make sure there's nothing in the way underneath, and it's a lot quicker to go and use my rotary cutter. It's easier to follow curves with that as well. But as you can see, I've got my hand in front. I'm going very slow. I do have my hand in front, and I'm just feeling the fabric to make sure that there's nothing else sitting underneath. I'm not pressing hard either, and you can see that there's a fold in the fabric underneath. I can feel that with my hand. I'll make sure there's no fabric in the way as I'm cutting. Remove all the excess fabric. Now you've got a nice cut along the edge, and you're not going to stretch out the fabric when it's on the curve here. So you've protected the integrity of the fabric. Now it's time to do the double fold hem. This is easier done at the machine. All you need to do is fold the hem over on that stitching line that you've got. So we don't even have to measure, because we know that that stitching line was 1/4 inch from the cut line. So all you need to do is fold that fabric on the stitching line, and then you'll fold that up again. That stitching line disappears, and you can sew close to the top edge of your fabric. If you need to, you can go and fold everything, pin it or clip it together, but this can really be done at the machine. And just when you're at the machine, just make sure you keep your needle in the down position when you need to manipulate your fabric. Because you've got that stitching line, you've actually created a nice mark that will help you fold that fabric, particularly on the curves as well. Just gives you a nice crease line. So you can see how that's folding up nicely. Measuring it as you go along is a little bit more tedious, and you have to go and pin it. So let's take this straight to the machine. You can see that's a really nice finished curve there. Once we've doubled that over, that'll be completely done. So starting at the very end, I've got the wrong side of the fabric facing up, so it's inside out. And I've just started with that double fold, and I can do a back stitch. I'm keeping the same stitch length, and I'll just continue on all the way until I get to the end. When you're at curved edges, you just want to manipulate that fabric so that the pleats of the curves sit underneath, and do small sections. I'm going to speed this section up because the entire hem for the final sewing took about 8 minutes to do. What you'll see is that I'll fold the fabric at that original stitching line about 2 to 3 inches beforehand. I'll just use my fingernail to press that seam in place, then I'll double fold that over. Because this is such a narrow hem of only about 1/4 of an inch, I don't need to clip the curves like you normally would when you're working with curved fabric. The small hem allows for the fabric to fold over nice and easily, but normally if you feel like it's not going to roll over properly, clip the edges. The inner curves are much easier than the outer curves, and it generally folds up really easily. I prefer to use this technique over pinning or hemming each section because it does make the job a whole lot quicker. And that's the hem completely finished. All we need to do now is iron it so it sits nice and flat. And there we go, we've got a nice even hem all the way around. I'm not sure if you can see the stitching line, it's nice and even. You've got that 1/4 of an inch seam. The front and back section matches up. And then you have the back as well. So job's done. That only took me about 20 to 25 minutes to complete. That includes the ironing and the measuring and all of those steps involved in hemming this shirt. I've got one more to do, so I'm going to go to work now and finish the other one. The customer will be charged $20 for this hem. So my hourly rate is $45 an hour, and I have a standard hem charge of $20, and that factors in to account the thread, the power, the time that you deal with the customer, and also for taking the job in as well, because all of that is part of the time it takes to process a person's job. So $20 for each hem. I'll take the blue one to work and finish that this morning. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more alterations, let me know, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.